Welcome to an out-of-the-box overview video. Today I am going to be looking at the Batman Who Laughs Rising. For those of you that haven't played this is a game set in the DC universe, so Batman, Superman, the Flash, Wonder Woman, and it's playing against the Dark Knights, which are a set of alternate dimension versions of the Batman. So we have a Batman that's based on the Joker, based on the Flash, and in this game you are fighting against them to try and stop them invading the current universe. So I'm going to kind of play this video almost backwards. This is the end game, so I've actually completed a game and I've won. Rather than do you a playthrough, I thought I'd just have a talk about the differences between this and the other Rising games, and then you can make a decision if it's the kind of game that you might like. So in this game you've got your familiar layout here, where you've got sets of cards that you either recruit heroes, so this is Red Tornado, or you have enemy cards like the Red Death, which is the Flash version of Batman that you would fight against. And you have a fantastic figure, which in this case is the Batman Who Laughs, who then moves around and triggers the abilities or attacks characters in each of these sectors. So I guess my quick takeaway of this is that if you're a DC fan and you like the metal storyline that went through the DC comics, and you don't mind a bit of dice randomness, because this game is very dice heavy, then this is a very solid 1 to 4 player game. As a 1 player, I play it with two teams. If you can handle more teams, you can play it. So the difference between this and the other Rising games, I also have Thanos Rising and Star Wars Dark Side Rising. In those games you win by defeating minions, and in this game you win by actually defeating the main character. So there is like a boss battle. And the way that plays out is, in addition to beating characters that are on the board and recruiting characters, you have sets of the Dark Knights, which are the main characters. So this is a Green Lantern version of Batman and a Superman version of Batman. They start in this kind of row along here. And as you increase the number of yellow tokens, yellow cubes, as they go through, they then get put onto the recruitment pile, and then they get recruited onto the board. And each time you remove one of the Dark Knights, a new bad ability arises, so that the Batman Who Laughs does something dastardly every turn, until you put in the last 2 cubes, which actually makes the boss attackable, and so you can then attack that boss, and you've basically got 6 turns. So when these 6 turns are filled up at the end, they win. And so I had one more turn left. So that would have been, it was a bit stressful. You have 2 teams of superheroes. So this game I was playing Hawkgirl and Green Lantern. I didn't have a lot of luck recruiting, and you can see my characters, as they take damage, they get little red cubes, and when they're full of damage, then they get killed off. I lost Commissioner Gordon and Harley Quinn, used a couple of tokens, but otherwise, in terms of if you've got other Rising games, do you need this one? I'm happy with it because I very much like the DC world. I wasn't a huge fan of the metal storyline, but I can get over that. The art is fantastic, the components are great, so I'm happy, and I'll regularly play it. The differences in terms of the Dark Knight characters when they stack up along here, for instance, and then they get released slowly as the game progresses, and that is generated with a yellow cube dice that you roll that has between 0 and 2 cubes, so there's a bit of randomness there. And then you have the Batman Who Laughs dice, which will either have a direction for turning or not, and some of these have crowns on them, and if they have a crown they also trigger the currently exposed ability. So there's lots of things that can change. you basically see your way out till the boss card arrives, and then you've got 6 turns to try and kill them and not have the rest of the board, because every time he turns onto a area where there's a card, I was in the wrong place, it's Hawkman, it would trigger their abilities. So say if he moved to that space, it would trigger Red Death and the Drowned. Hawkman would take a damage, and depending on whether this dice had a star or not. So there's a quick overview of Batman Who Laughs, Rising. Excellent components, fantastic if you're a DC fan and you like the metal. If you've already got Rising, if you don't like DC, probably not for you. But like I say, that progression of extra enemies, because there's some enemies that you draw anyway, so like the Court of Owls or the Evil Robins, the more powerful enemies get drawn out, but you know when it's going to happen, because each time you fill up each of these cubes, it goes on the top of the draw deck, so you do know when things are going. In terms of strategy, it can be a bit swingy. If you've got some very lucky rolls at the beginning and you can recruit some strong characters, it can be a bit of a grind at the end because you can just walk over the enemies. In this particular game, I had trouble recruiting, so the end game was quite exciting. I really didn't know whether I was going to win or not. And again, it's a dice game, so it can be swingy, and you're drawing random characters that are a mix of, Superman was on the bottom, characters you can recruit versus enemy characters, the Court of Owls, that then have negative effects. So yeah, I strongly recommend it. Gets my stamp of approval.